Hi guys, my name is Safira Firdausita and I'm a student in University of PGRI SEMARANG. In this time, I will explain about three kinds of experimental design. The first is pre-experimental design, and the second is true experimental design, and the last is quasi-experimental design. Okay, the first I will explain about pre-experimental design. We can say pre-experimental design because it is not yet a serious experiment because there are still external variables that influence the formation of the dependent variable. This design is useful for getting initial information about the question in the study. There are three kinds of pre-experimental design. The first is one-shot case study, where in this design of this study there is one group given a treatment, then the result will be observed. In this experiment, the subject is present with several types of treatment and the results are measured. And the second is one pre-test post-test design group. If in the before design there is not pre-test before treatment, but in this design there is any pre-test before being treatment, and the result will be more accurately because we can compare before and after treatment. And the third is intake group comparison. In this design, there is one group used for research but divided into two. Half the group for the experiment and half for the control group. Next is true experimental design. We can say true experimental design because in this design the researcher can control the external variables that affect the course of the experiment. That internal validity can be high. The main characteristic of this design is the sample used as experiment or as a control group was taken randomly from a certain population. So the characteristic is the presence of control group and randomly sample. There are three kinds of true experimental design. There are three kinds of true experimental design. The first is post-test only control design, and the second is pre-test post-test control group, and the last is the Solomon for group design. And the last is quasi-experimental design. This form of experimental design is a development of true experimental design, which is difficult to implement. This design has a control group, but it cannot function fully to control external variables that affect the conduct of experiment. However, this design is better than pre-experimental design. There are three kinds of quasi-experimental design. The first is time series design, and the second is non-equivalent control group, and the third is counterbalance design. Okay, that's the three kinds of experimental design. I'm sorry for my mistake. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.